What is up, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheetshaver. We are going to be doing a showdown show for you. Interesting little one gamer with the. I always get the names wrong. I guess now that LA is in, I don't know, just too many different places these teams have moved to. But you've got the Raiders and the Chargers. I almost said Raiders and Rams again. And it's we have some question marks tonight. So Sheets, do you have any sort of overall outlook, or is it maybe too early to have it decided while we are still wondering about Keenan Allen and Mike Williams?
No, it's not too early. I mean, Mike Williams is out, and
I had him as limited.
Mike Williams is out, and Keenan Allen, they don't expect him to play. If they do, if he does, it will be severely limited.
Wow. Okay. So I actually just had him had both as limited as of right now, but that's my bad. And so, right. All right, man. So let's get into it. It's going to be hard because obviously the projections haven't exactly. They're kind of updated, at least on some of the sites. Do you have fairly updated projections on your sites?
Nothing.
Okay.
So we're just let's just go through this.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the easiest part of it, but so for Las Vegas, Ruggs is out with COVID, and the other bit of news, which is kind of not sneaky, but Josh Jacobs is back, right? So for me, I feel as though the majority of the volume and the touchdown equity is pretty concentrated on the Vegas side between Jacobs and Waller. Those are the two main guys that I think are, and we could say the same thing about LAC when we get there, but I think that Jacobs and Waller are going to get the majority of the work, honestly, of the whole thing. But what we have to do is then figure out what the receiving thing is going to look like. So like the first thing I noticed is that, that it's kind of even hard to imagine like that you could say this is like the return of Nelson Aguilar over the last couple of weeks. So there's Nelson Aguilar. It's not the greatest crew, right? You got Hunter Renfrow as the two wide receivers, right? So I guess like the question I had, rhetorically or not, is who that wide receiver 3 is. Now, obviously the real wide receiver 3, or maybe wide receiver 2, is Darren Waller, right? I think that's the reality, but I think it's definitely worth for a showdown thinking about who that other wide receiver is going to be in there, because Derek Carr, he will throw it to whoever's open also. Mm-hmm. So the one guy that really hasn't even seen the bit on the field. He had like one target last week, but is it possible that they're going to be forced to play Zay Jones at 800 or no?
I think it's possible. I would lean towards Bryan Edwards.
Okay.
Just going back more to things that we heard before the season, thinking that he was going to be more involved in the offense, and without when you lose Ruggs, maybe he does get some of that work. And it's speculation on both sides, but I'm finding myself leaning a little bit more towards Edwards than Zay Jones. I think he's a big body. You could see him with targets or down in the goal line potentially. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just sort of speculating. But if I was going to pick between those two guys, my initial lean would be Bryan Edwards. And I'm guessing that the projections will have him a little bit higher than Zay Jones, but both of them are definitely somewhat dart throwy. Although, like you said, we do know that Derek Carr will throw it to who's ever open. So playing, one of these guys in a good portion of your lineups, I don't think is a bad idea. I'm leaning Edwards heavier than Jones.
The other thing I wanted to say is, again, I don't do as much in-depth, matchup work as I guess a lot of people do with respect to who's covering who or whatever. But there's some I saw that apparently the guy who is going to be covering Waller from the Chargers is like 8 inches shorter than him or something. Like Waller has like the complete nut matchup in this particular thing. Now, again, I forgot the guy's name, but I read that somewhere, and that whole Darren Waller thing is kind of tough to fade for me, as is a healthy Josh Jacobs. I mean, again, like this usage, I mean, these are by far their two best players, right?
Right.
So I I almost want to just play those two guys, take 0 Aguilar, take 0 of like, you know, Hunter Renfroe, I don't really like anyway. And then just do other things and be more spread out on the Chargers. I mean, I don't know. What do you think of Josh Jacobs? What do you think of the Raiders? What else are we missing here?
So I like the I mean, I think Waller is a very, very tough and really, why are we really trying to fade him kind of a guy in this game. But I'm actually high. I like Jacobs fine. I'm a little higher on Eckler than I am on Jacobs. In terms of both running backs, not that you can't obviously play both of them. But on the Raiders side, I agree with you that you're going to get the majority of the usage through those guys. I still think that one receiver probably has a game where you'd want to have him one other guy. And then you get into like, how many do I want of each? My initial thing was sort of like what you were saying, like maybe play just those two and then 4 guys from the Chargers. I actually like that better. I like the idea of playing 4 Chargers and 2 Raiders in most of my lineups, but I wouldn't mind a little bit of mixing it up. I actually wouldn't even mind just playing Carr and Waller, even on the Raiders side, just because he can spread it around so much. The problem is you probably get another receiver who gets there by that point. So if I'm using 3 of them, I'm trying to mix in one of the Edwards, Aguilar, Renfroe with those guys, but it's pretty chalky. So I'm really not sure that I love any of them, but it's, we obviously don't have a ton of choices. So Jacobs and Waller are my favorite. And I think the next favorite on their team would be Aguilar. But I think this is the kind of game where you could see Hunter Renfroe actually just get a ton of targets, depending on sort of how the game script goes. So maybe if you need the extra savings on price, you can go Renfroe, but I don't like any of those guys as captains. And just off the bat, I mean, my instinct is to play Waller and Eckler mostly as captains with a little bit of Herbert.
Yeah. We're gonna get to the Charger side. The other thing is that I also read that you need to read this, that the Vegas kicker really hasn't been doing anything. So if you were going to play the kicker, you'd probably want to do the other one, Badgett instead of Carlson, whatever. I don't know if I want to get to kickers in this game. I'm not sure. I mean, both these defenses just give up a lot, so I don't know if a kicker can be part of the optimal here. I don't know. Anything else on now? You want to be you want to get cutesy on any of this stuff? Like you want to play like Rashard? You want to play Devontae Booker? Anything else or not really?
Yeah, I think I would take shots on either of those guys. I probably prefer Rashard a little bit, just because the chance of them being down and him playing in the passing game, I think, is possible, and more likely than Booker probably in that situation. But I really could see going with either of them. I personally just have a slight lean towards Rashard.
Okay. And Foster Moreau, by the way, is always the person who gets the touchdown or the catch when I need like 3 other guys from Vegas.
Right. It's probably worth noting that the Chargers have been the worst special team in history, and they give up so many scores on that, and they also do turn the ball over. So I don't think the Raiders' defense is a terrible play at 3K.
Okay, so I guess that's a decent transition right into LAC. So they're missing Mike Williams. I'm presuming they're missing Mike Williams, and unfortunately, given his price, you just have to basically presume that Keenan Allen is not playing. Honestly, I mean, I don't want to be the person on this slate to and I know people have done this with McCaffrey and whatever it is to try to fade that narrative. You know what I mean? That say, okay, I know they say he's limited, but I'm going to take a shot anyway just in case. I don't know, man. I don't think I can do it. If you get better clarity that he's actually playing or something like that without limitations, I don't want to take a limited Keenan Allen. I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I would too.
So I guess let's have some fun, right? So at least they didn't do something like for the Ravens, right? At least these other receivers.
Did I lose you there for a second?
Yeah, no, I'm getting, no, you take away, Steve. I'm getting distracted myself. No, thank you. I'm getting, at least they made these guys like not that cheap. You know what I mean? Like Guyton. Okay, Guyton's probably a terrible misprice if both those guys are out at 2,800. But The other one, Tyrone Johnson, he's a full 7,500. You know what I mean? It's not like he's nothing. So actually he's 5,000, he's 7,500 captain. Shoot. So both of those guys, if they're literally going to be wide receivers 1 and 2, that's kind of tough to fade in a way, you know. Now again, you mentioned, you know, what's clearly, I guess clearly the best play is going to be Austin Eckler, right? I mean, the only thing that's kind of concerning to me, and I guess it really shouldn't be, is, I mean, they do run Balaj out there with like a decent amount of snaps, you know. So, I mean, Balaj is only 2,400. I think I should get some of that. You know what I mean? Like, so for me, the Chargers is where it's going to be interesting. Hunter Henry, he's going to get a lot more targets this week, right?
Yeah.
Shoot. So how do you prioritize this stuff? Like,
so I think Henry is number 1 of those guys, of the receivers.
Okay.
I think other people might just immediately say Guyton and Johnson, but I mean Guyton's price is kind of crazy given the situation he'll get in. I actually think Guyton is, like, if they were the same price, I probably would take Guyton over Johnson tonight. I don't think they're all that much different. Wait, what is Johnson at rate? He's at 5K.
5,000.
Yeah, I just don't think they're all. I don't think they're all that much different in this game with these guys out. So you're sort of like trying to guess who's going to get the work between them. But in my opinion, I think that the safest thing to do is to play Hunter Henry. I'm going to guess that most people are going to have a similar type of feeling. Just to mention the other guys, KJ Hill at 200 would be one of the weird ones you could use who could get some work. He's got a target. He's got a catch the last couple of weeks. And with those 2 guys out, he's one you could put on your list. I'm more interested in the running back thing, though. The Raiders they've given up so many. I think they've given up they're on the pace or close for a record number of rushing touchdowns this year. Part of what my love for Jonathan Taylor last week. I really think that playing like 2 of the running backs might not be the worst way to go. I know we talked about it with the Cleveland situation, and I sort of was on the maybe it would work out, and it happened to work out just perfectly that night where those 2 running backs both went off.
Yeah. But
I don't think you need them both to go off here. I think that you can play Balaj and Eckler, or the lower-owned Justin Jackson and Eckler. I think Jackson still has some breaks. You know, he can be he can break a big play. He can get work in the passing game. He had 3 catches last week. Even with Eckler out there, he still does get some of the passing game, some of the third down work. So I actually think that I might, Balaj seems like the more obvious one, but I think Jackson at really low ownership could be the sneaky one who could end up getting you there.
That's interesting.
And again, like, they don't have their pass catchers. Is there a chance maybe that these? I mean, obviously I like Eckler too, but like you can play Eckler and these guys. Maybe more than one running back gets work in the passing game throughout the course of the game. And Guyton and Tyler Johnson, again, it's going to come down to. I mean, Tyron Johnson is going to probably be a little lower owned just because Guyton's probably going to project a little better, and it's going to be close, and he's much cheaper. But you kind of need to spend money, so I'm kind of curious to see where that'll go. We don't really have any ownership projections because everything's up in the air. But yeah, I mean, I guess we should try to make some builds with some things that could be different, because right now it seems hard for me to get away from the chalk without using the 3rd string running back or like a Richard or something, or maybe double running backs on both sides is another interesting way to go. It just feels hard to get away from what's going to be pretty chalky receivers.
Do you agree that Herbert's a better quarterback play than Carr, or close? Or okay, Herbert. Right.
Yeah, I would think I would prefer Herbert over Carr, but I'm fine. I think both of them you can easily fit into lineups. There's a lot of different things you can do. I'm really bummed about Mike Williams and Keenan Allen being out, because I wanted to play this game a different way and use. I wanted to play a guy like Edwards in my captain spot. I wanted to take a shot on some of these cheap guys, and so I can just hammer everybody in. But it's really not working out to be that kind of a slate. So
I think that the other thing, again, is this accurate? I mean, the other thing is that with Williams and Allen possibly out, I think it also, while it takes away Herbert's passing TD equity a little bit, it improves his rushing equity a little bit. Because he doesn't have his deep threat or his possession receiver.
Right.
So he's So he does have rushing upside as well.
Right. And I mean, yeah, if I think that if they're like, if not, I don't want to say like cash or core or anything. I just wanted to throw out like if you are going to make like the core guys who I think you want to try to build around are going to be chalky, obviously, but Waller, Eckler, Henry, Herbert,
Jacobs
would be the other one, and then one of this Guyton or Johnson is, you want to mix in probably 4 of those guys and try and find a couple unusual plays. That would, and for me, my favorites would be Edwards. I like Ballage and Jackson, but if Jackson looks like he's going to be far lower owned, I'm more than happy to go there. He actually is more of a similar type of player to Eckler than Ballage is, and I just think he's better, even though Ballage has been getting more work. So I would definitely go there if he was going to be the cheaper one. And then on the other side, you have the Rashard. You're right. I mean, like the more I look at it, I'm not as excited about this Aguilar-Renfro situation at mega chalk. I sort of like the idea of trying to maybe take a shot on just playing Edwards as the only receiver I play other than Waller for the Raiders in my big lineups.
I kind of like your Justin Jackson idea, because remember that he was out for like 6 weeks, right? With a knee, and they brought him back and gave him a couple of carries, gave him 3 targets. He caught them all. And maybe he splits that, secondary work with Ballage, maybe, and so if you get like a tie for 1B at 2K, is that enough? I mean, is it enough work he's got to break one to make it worth it, right?
Right. But I mean, well, not necessarily. I mean, it could be the kind of game where he ends up with 4 catches for 45 or 50 yards, and 10 points might be good enough. In fact, very likely could be good enough if he puts up 10 fantasy points, But you probably would want to do it in a lineup where you're leaving money on the table, or I don't know if you want to captain him, but you want to play him with maybe a Guyton or something, with another chalky or cheap guy in his range, as opposed to instead of, because I think it's harder for him to outscore those guys, but I think he could be a great play in addition to those guys. And there's no reason why this couldn't break Justin Jackson's way. I mean, I know that there's been injuries with the Chargers this year, but like, let's just look at Justin Jackson's game log. I mean, there's two out of the last 5 games that he's been eligible for, he's been leading their main running back. He's had 6, until last week, which was, his first game back. He'd had, 6 and 5 targets the previous weeks when he was there. When he was last playing, he was their running back. So I know that Eckler was out, but I still don't think it's necessarily impossible that it would turn into him being the backup running back in this spot, which could also mean, first of all, Eckler always has some injury possibilities, and he's not going to play every down. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Jackson overtake Ballage, and I think he has more upside because of the work in the passing game. Probably lower owned too, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get onto that a little bit too more. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the other thing I was again, just kind of hit me with respect. I originally said I didn't think I wanted to play any kickers, but I guess it is kind of a natural play that if the Chargers are missing their 2 best touchdown catchers and receivers, that it's not the worst idea in the world to play Badgley, as with the theory that they're just not going to get it in as often. So I definitely, I far prefer him. I'll repeat that to the Vegas guy, because Vegas have their finishers out there. They have Waller and Jacobs on the field. So I feel as though the opportunities for field goals for the Chargers is going to be better than the opportunities for Vegas for field goals.
Yes. I agree with that. I still don't know if I'm getting to any kickers on this slate. And even the defense feels really thin for the Raiders, but I think there's a little bit of upside just because of, we've just seen mistakes before from Herbert, and the special teams has been dreadful for the Chargers. So blocked punts, blocked field goals. We've seen some of the worst. They called it the worst special teams game of all time 2 weeks ago. So yeah, I think I would lean that way instead of the kickers in this one myself. But I don't mind if you were going to take a kicker, I definitely would lean Chargers. And I just want to reiterate, I do think Edwards gets overlooked more now with his other value opening up, where he might have had some attention before. So Edwards and Jackson, keep an eye on what you think their ownerships might be, because I think those might be your differentiators from the chalk. I
think that the 4 I think the four guys that are at the top, like this kind of, this kind of mock lineup I have,
Mhm.
I think those four guys represent, I think, all my captain exposure. You know, I don't think
Mhm.
I'm going to get to Carr in the captain. I don't think I'm going to get to Aguilar, or anybody else. Do you think Henry can do enough to get in the captain?
Yes,
You do?
I think Henry and Guyton both could.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But Guyton also allows you the flexibility to do everything else
Right.
like elsewhere too, or just
Yeah,
leave the money on the table.
yeah, I find it difficult to believe that, I say difficult to believe. I mean, Waller and Jacobs are just going to be, I guess, so popular. They just have to be, right? I mean, and
Yeah.
Eckler, all three of them.
Yeah, and if you want to take a shot on and fading Jacobs and playing like a guy like Richard or Booker, I prefer Richard. I don't think that's the worst idea in the world. There's enough times where he rushes for 75 yards here and doesn't get in the end zone, and maybe only catches a ball or two to where maybe you don't need him. And I would prefer to fade Jacobs over the other guys in this lineup, except for, I mean, Edwards obviously and Guyton. You could, I mean, but of the top four, I don't
Right.
find him as.
So so you think that that of Eckler, Waller, and Jacobs, you feel Jacobs is the most fadeable?
Yes. Well, yes. But I think Eckler is fadeable, and if you're playing Jackson, but you could also play him with Jackson too.
Yeah, that's the thing. The reason why I would disagree is, again, like, I just see all these variations where Eckler shares work. You know, I don't see that with Jacobs. I just feel as though Jacobs is just completely going to be responsible for all of the running back.
Yeah, I look at Eckler and I think that he's going to catch a lot more. I mean, he's the one who should get an upgrade to me, partially for the passing game. I mean,
Right.
we see him as the guy who gets those. You know, he had 16 targets the other couple games back.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason. But again, that's partly why I like Justin Jackson. I mean, if the work shifts a little bit, or even if Eckler misses a few plays, and what if Jackson catches one and breaks one from 30 yards out or whatever?
Yep.
I mean, you could really get something out of this, and he might get enough work alone just to get him there. He just might not need a touchdown, Jackson.
Yeah, I think I'm going to end up, my underweights or X's are going to be the Raiders wide receivers, the expensive ones. You know, with Aguilar, Renfro, and then also the expensive guy for the Chargers, Johnson. I think those are the guys that are going to be my underweight or X's or whatever.
That's who I feel a little bit like as well. And, you know, it's interesting. Yeah, I agree with that. It's interesting because I am curious how they're going to line up. I would have thought they would put Casey Hayward on, not that he's like a lockdown corner exactly like people make him out to be, but I thought they'd put him on Aguilar. The projection things I'm seeing don't have him on Aguilar. But I would agree with that, and it's still that sentiment. And I think that Casey Hayward still will end up matching up with Aguilar enough of the time to where you want to play the other guys more. And to me, that would just be Brian Edwards. And like I said about Jacobs being the most fadeable, I still am going to have a majority of Jacobs lineups. I just was trying to find a way to get different any way I could, you know?
And so, and defenses, you actually, it's funny because you actually prefer the Vegas defense to the Chargers defense, huh?
Yeah, the Raiders don't turn the ball over all that much. They tend to keep the ball in the middle of the field. The Chargers have been one of the most mistake-prone teams in history this year. They're one of those 3-9 teams that should be whatever, 3-10, that could easily be, you know, 7-5 or something, or 7-4, whatever it could be. And I just have seen enough of those mistakes and their stuff on special teams to where it's just enough of a reason to give me a shot. Okay, well, let's take a shot and hope maybe we get those. You know, maybe we won't get the 35 or 38 points that the New England Patriots put on them, but at 3K, certainly could see the Raiders defense outscoring all those cheap guys in the same price range.
All right, I think I don't know. I think that we've pretty much covered it. No.
Yeah, we talked about some options, and again, I mean, I do. I think we like the main guys, but I think you're right. Fading the Raiders' top pass catchers as well as the Chargers. Tyron Johnson. I think that's sort of the way to go. And then trying to mix in the Jacksons, Jalen Richard, and maybe a little bit of Balaj. That's sort of what I'm doing. All right. For Sheets, guys, I'm Bobby, and we are going to get another show loaded up for Saturday and then for this big weekend. So good luck to everyone out there. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards.
All right.